What's up everybody, my name is Frank, aka Detroit M2, and today we're going to be installing this ultimate flex fuel kit from Bend Calibration. Stay tuned. Alright, so the first step that we're going to do here is we're going to take this rear seat out and get to the low pressure fuel pump. The reason we want to do that is because we want to try to drain as much gas as possible out of the fuel system so we're not leaking it all over the floor. So first thing, to get this rear seat out, you just kind of lift it up in the front and it pops out like that. And we just kind of shimmy it a little bit here, push the seat belts down. All right, so once we have the seat off, we can lift up this little thing here, and you have this housing. And this housing right here, this is where your low pressure fuel pump is. You have 5 10mm nuts on here. So we're just gonna zip those off real quick. All right, so once you have those nuts off, you can pull this whole panel off here. You look, you got a connector right here. So this connector is what powers your low pressure fuel pump. And this provides the signal to the car. So we're gonna go ahead and disconnect that. It's just a little simple clip there. So now the low pressure fuel pump, which is underneath this, is not gonna get any power. So we're able to drain the fuel system. So I'm just gonna set this out of the way, then we'll fire up the car and drain the fuel out of it. All right, so we drained all the fuel from the fuel lines. We started it up, got all the fuel out of there. Now we're gonna disconnect the negative terminal on the battery. This is just extra certainty to make sure that nothing's going to happen while we're underneath the car. You know, technically with the low pressure fuel pump turned off, we should be okay, but you know, better safe than sorry. So I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect the negative terminal here.
Safety third.
Safety third. All right. So as you can see, I have a bunch of accessory wires hooked up to this, but don't worry about those. See if I can get it off here. There we go. So I'm gonna put a rag over top of this so that it doesn't touch. Additionally, what you're gonna wanna do here is definitely a good idea to put something over top of the clip for your trunk, because if your trunk closes while your negative battery terminal is disconnected, you're gonna be in a world of hurt because you're not gonna be able to get in your trunk. So that's all done. I'll put a rag here and then we'll get the car up and we'll start on the bottom. All right, now that we have the car up on the lift, we're gonna go ahead and go through here and pull all these 8mm bolts out to clear the skid plate, or whatever you're going to call it. All right, so we have the bottom skid plate off, which has exposed our fuel lines. This blue line here is actually your fuel line. You'll notice right up here, we have these 2 threaded holes. This is directly next to the transmission right here. So if you look at the filter itself, it has this flow marker on it. Now, common sense would tell you that flow needs to go towards the front of the car. That's incorrect. So we have these little elbows here that help it line up with the OEM lines. And this is actually gonna mount like this. And the flow is actually gonna be pointed toward the rear. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna get this tacked up here and get this fuel line disconnected, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we've disconnected this clip here and it holds it to this metal bracket. And then we pulled the fuel line out of here. It took a little bit of spreading this apart to be able to pull the blue fuel line out. So now the fuel line is completely free. It has this little gray clip on it. So we're just gonna pop that gray clip off first. I know it's probably hard to see from the camera, but it just slides right off. You can't really mess it up. So we pull the clip off, down there. So once you have that off, essentially all you have to do, and again, I'm gonna put these rags up here because I don't wanna get gas all over the place. Effectively what you need to do is you need to push the fuel line in, and then this little collar right here, you pull it back, and then the whole thing should come out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now and try not to get gas all over the place. fucking awesome?
It's a boy.
It's a boy. I got it in the face.
Well, at least it wasn't under like 30 PSI or something.
Yeah.
Need another rag?
Yeah, for my face. Ugh. That's fucking awesome. Did you get sprayed?
Ever so gently.
I wonder if it was negative pressure.
You're right, because it came back out
Yeah.
instead of going forward.
Because I ran it. Maybe that's why it was so hard to get off. There it goes. All right, so I don't know if you caught that on camera, but I just got sprayed in the face with gas. So just FYI, there will be some pressure still in the line. Once it came loose, it kind of sprayed a little bit. So just make sure your face isn't directly in front of it like mine was. So I just loosened it right now, and I'm just kind of letting it get the pressure out of the line. I'm gonna slowly pull this out, and I've got a rag wrapped completely around it just to catch any gas, because I don't want to leak gas all over the floor. So once we have that, I'm gonna pull this line completely out. There we go. All right, so that's the gas line completely disconnected now. I'm gonna kind of tuck this up over here a little bit and make sure we're not leaking any gas. Nope, we're good. So my job of draining all the gas worked, other than the fact that I think I built up negative pressure in the line by running the car with the low pressure fuel pump disconnected. So that's what that sort of explosion of gas was. All right, so we're good there. So fuel line's disconnected. I'm gonna go ahead and mount up my, my fuel filter now. All right, so the fuel is effectively drained now, and we're not too concerned about that anymore. We're gonna go ahead and mount this up. So I'm gonna hold this in place, and my buddy Sam here is gonna put the screws in for us. So after putting this up here, we did realize that this is actually getting in the way. So we're gonna go out and pull this off. It's not really doing anything, it's holding this padding in place, but once we get the bracket up there, this isn't gonna be needed at all. So, all right, let's try this again. That should give us the room that we need to actually mount it. All right, so we got the bracket mounted up there. One thing to note is all these fittings, when you get them from the factory, these are all like finger tight. So we went through and tightened all of these fittings on this bracket. So now that we got that in place, I'm gonna go ahead and connect the fuel lines. And yeah, basically they're just press fit. I'm just trying to determine what the best way to route these is gonna be. I'm thinking I'm gonna wanna run this line on the top of this bracket up like this. Which is probably easier once it's in place. So we'll have that up there like that. And this one is effectively going to sit on top of it.
And then considering whether we will be reusing this at all or not, this plastic bracket.
All right, so in putting this up here, I just realized there's a little end piece on here. This actually needs to come off for you to put the fuel line in place. So it just unscrews like this. It's just a little piece that's in the way. So once that's in there, then we can get this up where it needs to go. Take our fuel line, push it into, put this collar around the outside of it here. And it's gonna go between the two little raised sections of the fuel line here. We're gonna put it right there, and we're gonna push this into place, which may take a little coaxing, because there is a seal in there. There it goes. So once you get that pushed all the way in there, we can now thread this little collar back into place, and this will pull it all the way into place and hold it for us. All right, so we got that snugged up. The next thing is we're gonna connect this line here from our filter to the high pressure line, which is hidden back here. You probably can't see it. I'm gonna try to bring it forward a little bit so we can work on it. There it is, okay. We have this high pressure line here. So it's got a little cover on the here so that we don't get any debris in here. So I'm just gonna pull that off. And this should just press right into here, just like the other one did. And it snaps into place. You hear an audible snap when you put that one in there. So that should be it. We should be good to go there. I'm just wondering if I need to reorient any of these fuel lines or not. I don't think this big hose is gonna fit into this bracket, but the smaller one may fit right there, but I think this line is actually in my way for doing that. So I may need to like rotate it up a little bit, like this, get it into position, and then we can take this OEM line, slide it up there like that, and then this should pop right into the existing hole that was in that bracket, like that. There we go. And that's all connected. Everything seems snug and secure. All right, so now that we have the bracket all in place, let me try to reposition the camera a little bit here. You can see that I don't have the filter on currently. I'm gonna go ahead and put that back in place. I had to take it off because you can't get to these bolts. So press the filter into place. It's got a little rubber O-ring that seals it into place. And then just put this over top of it and carefully tighten it down. There's a little clip right here, and if you push on one side of it, this is what holds the filter cover in place once it gets around here. There it goes. So once it gets past there, it can't back out. All right, so now we're gonna lower the car down, reconnect the low pressure fuel pump, reconnect the negative battery, start this up, and make sure that this isn't leaking before we close anything up. All right, so we lowered the car down. We're gonna reconnect the low pressure fuel pump and the negative terminal. We're gonna start it up, and we're gonna check for any leaks. And that's before we actually button everything up. It's just a good idea to do this just to ensure we're not leaking fuel all over the place. Clear? I'm gonna give it a couple revs just to cycle some fuel through it.
No problem. So one droplet come off. Nothing further. Still clear.
All right. Let's lift it back up and take a look and see what we got. So when I was pulling this little bracket off here, it's like one of those little like screw on things, and I kind of stripped it out so it doesn't really fit in there properly anymore. It's gonna move around. So I'm just gonna go ahead and zip tie it down. You know, you can probably be a little bit more careful about doing this yourself and not have to do this step, but you know, this is just extra insurance. Zip ties are always good. So we'll just go ahead and snug that down right there so those don't move around. All right, so the next thing is with this unit, I got a Zytronics ECA2, and that'll allow the flex fuel sensor here to communicate with the ECU of the car via CAN bus. I'm not gonna hook up the Zytronics unit today, but since I am underneath the car, I'm gonna go ahead and hook up the harness for it and run the wire up into my engine bay so I don't have to get under the car later and do it. So it's just a plug. I'm just gonna plug it in, and then try to find a way to route it up into the engine bay, just like that. And we may put some additional zip ties on this to kind of hold it into place so that it doesn't get caught up on the bottom. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'll go on to the next step. right, so we're back on top of the car. I went ahead and ran this wire loom up through the top. I put a zip tie around it. Like I said, I'm not gonna hook this up right now because I've got to run this through the firewall, and I'm not gonna do that today. So I zip tied this up and I taped the end of it so we don't get any water in it. And then I'm just gonna kind of tuck it back up underneath here and then zip tie it again so it stays out of the way. Yeah, that's basically it. That's the whole process. Everything seemed fine. There was no fuel leaks. I'm excited to move forward and try to get some flex fuel going on this. So if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.